I've been a bit short on creative ideas lately, so I decided to search the internet for some inspiration. That's when this figurine caught my eye that I had sitting around for quite some time now. While I was browsing the internet, I came across a relatively new tabletop game called Trench Crusade, and that gave me a really good vision for my next project. So I ordered some World War I models and the new diorama idea was born. But spoiler alert, this diorama doesn't have any Trench Crusade miniatures in it. It's just an inspiration and hasn't really anything to do with the game itself. And I have to apologize if my voice sounds a little bit strange. That is because I have a cold right now, which sucks. I began assembling the miniatures, which are British soldiers from the First World War by Wargames Atlantic. And meanwhile, I can tell you about the game Trench Crusade and the whole idea what this diorama is about. Imagine a universe where the Crusaders completely botched the First Crusade in the year 1099 and somehow they literally opened the gates to hell. So humanity was very busy fighting off demons for centuries until the year 1914. So basically the First World War, and this is where the game currently takes place. The whole universe is very dark and messed up, and humanity even tried to clone Jesus, and they called that creation Meta Jesus, and that idea sounded so crazy that I instantly fell in love with it. That takes me to the idea for my diorama. We have humanity fighting against supernatural ancient beings like gods or demons, and those ancient beings are manifested in statues. And our soldiers here are trying to destroy that statue, which can kill the god or devil behind it. But those statues are not defenseless, which you will see later in that video. When I was done assembling the soldier miniatures, which was a joy by the way, because I was very impressed by the quality and the details of those minis, I moved on to the statue itself. Here we have that beautiful model created by Mindworks Studios, and that model represents a goddess of the moon in my universe. And people, for some reason, are scared of it, so they want to destroy it. But people are very often scared of things they do not understand. Let's move on. To let our moon goddess really shine and make her stand out more, I created some kind of pedestal. For that I used small pieces of XPS foam and I cut those into the right shapes. To make a tiny bit of decoration for the pedestal, I cut out these tiny strips of XPS, and when I was happy with everything, I glued everything together with hot glue. Then I used toothpicks and wood glue to combine our beautiful goddess with the pedestal. But that wasn't enough, because I wanted to create a shrine for our goddess. So for that I used a bigger XPS piece where everything should be placed, and this bigger XPS piece should look like cobblestone or big stone tiles. So I carved in that stone tile layout with my pencil, and I also created some stone pillars in the same look that I glued on with some hot glue. The shrine was pretty much done, so I moved on to the terrain piece and the base of the whole diorama, which was the biggest one until now, and this was the part where I realized that I almost ran out of XPS foam, so I had to cobble it together using leftover pieces somehow. So please remind me to get more XPS foam next time I leave the house. So here I was sitting with a big chunk of XPS, and then I took my Sharpie and started drawing a basic layout. The idea was to elevate the shrine with the goddess statue on a small hill, and in front of the shrine I wanted to make a staircase which leads to the shrine itself. After I was done, I took a hot wire cutter and basically destroyed everything again, which was pretty fun. With my hobby knife and some pliers, I ripped and cut out the shape for the staircase, which did not exist at this point yet, so I had to build a staircase next. I was very fortunate because this XPS piece, and I kid you not, was the last one big enough to create the whole staircase. So lucky me, I guess. So I was cutting and shaping that staircase with my knife, which took a very, very long time, but in the end I was pretty happy with the result. To add more details, I also created a small crater right next to the shrine, so it seems that humanity even tried to shoot at the goddess with artillery, which didn't go too well. Then I took a kitchen Bunsen burner to smoothen out the terrain a little bit. I also found some neat little sticks outside that I almost had to use for my diorama to create some old dead trees. The surface at this point was way too unrealistic, so I took this grainy modeling paste to make a more realistic, muddy and earthy terrain. Using a modeling or texture paste is always something that I love in any project, because applying that paste with a spatula or a paintbrush is just relaxing and very satisfying. When I was done with that, I let the whole diorama sit for a few hours to let the modeling paste completely dry. That was the part where I realized that I had forgotten an important part, because, like I mentioned earlier, the statue is not really defenseless, and one defense mechanism is that the moon goddess can rip open the ground to frighten their enemies. So yeah, that was something that I had to do after everything had dried. The building part of the terrain was finished, so the next step was to prime and paint everything. First I primed the whole terrain with my airbrush and a black primer paint, and also the World War I miniatures. After that I took an earthy brown and base coated everything with it, except the shrine itself. For the shrine I used a basic grey tone and primed that with my airbrush as well. For more variety for the stone tiles I mixed together different kinds of grey tones and also a little bit of green, so that the shrine doesn't look too flat. I also applied some darker colors to the crater to make it stand out a little bit more. And lastly, I dry brushed the whole terrain with different kinds of lighter brown tones and just a smidge of sand color for some specific highlights. And if you know me, then you will know that I love me some good dry brushing. Because with this technique you can't really do anything wrong. It makes everything look a little bit better, in my opinion. Then I used a white and grayish contrast paint for the statue itself, because I wanted to make it look a little bit like marble, and while I was painting it I realized that the contrast paint peeled off some of the base coat under it. Then I panicked until I realized that it looked pretty good, so yeah, it was fully intended, I guess. To finish the terrain I used some static grass and applied that with my trusty static grass applicator, link in the description if you want to see how to make one for yourself. And yeah, at this point it doesn't really look good at all because the glue hadn't dried yet. But trust me, after the glue had dried it looks pretty good. And I almost forgot to paint the World War I miniatures, so I did that. For the colors I wasn't really that creative, so I just looked at the package they came in and used that color scheme. Our moon goddess had an additional way to protect herself in form of a protective shield. So I took 1/2 of this plastic ball to create that shield. With this paper template and a Sharpie I sketched the basic shape of the shield, how I wanted to look like. And then I took my Proxon micro mod to cut out that shape. The edges were a little bit rough, so I sanded them down with the same Proxon tool. In the diorama, one of the soldiers tossed a hand grenade directly to the statue and the shield protected her from that explosion. So I wanted to create that explosion effect directly on the protective shield. So I took a LED filament, which is basically the explosion itself, and I wrapped it around a piece of toothpick and drowned the whole thing with hot glue. Then I drilled a tiny hole into the shield itself to guide the wires through. And to fully sell the explosion effect, I used cotton wool and glued that onto the shield as well. And of course all over the LED filament that I also glued onto the shield. Off camera, I prepared red LED filaments that I wanted to put into the cracks that I almost forgot earlier, if you remember. So I squeezed the filaments into the cracks, and I also guided all the wires through tiny holes that I punched through the base to the power supply, which was hidden underneath the whole diorama. All I have to do was to connect and solder every connection beneath the base, and if you're curious, the whole electric circuit was built in parallel. Now I had to fix the shield with the explosion effect assembly somehow in place, and to be honest, it was a bit of a struggle because I had no idea how I should do that. Fortunately, I found a small plastic tube, and that helped me to secure the whole assembly onto one of the pillars. So I used my hot glue gun and glued everything in place. After that, I wanted to decorate the diorama a bit to make it look more natural, so I took some moss and glued that onto the trees and on other parts of the terrain. And I also scattered some tiny bushes all over the diorama. But something was still missing. Yeah, you're absolutely right, the soldiers. So I glued them in place, and that was pretty much it. All I have to do was to paint the edges of the base black, and we finished. I know it took me a bit longer to create this video, and I'm very sorry for that, but this was the biggest project that I've ever done before, so yeah, of course that takes a little longer to make. And I was also very busy in my life besides of my YouTube projects. But I had a lot of fun creating it, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And as always, if you wanna see more stuff like this, leave me a comment down below, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Alright, thank you for watching, have a good one, cheers.